4 college students from a Utah university vanished during a volunteer trip. Their mysterious disappearance baffled even seasoned investigators. But 4 months later, a clerk at a harbor discovers something shocking inside a shipping container. A disturbing find that changes the entire case. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead in Marion Hartley's diner, casting uneven shadows across the worn laminate tabletop. It was 5:30 a.m. in Cedar City, Utah, and the small-town diner wouldn't open for another hour and a half. In the dining area, 4 women huddled around a table covered with coffee-stained maps, shipping route printouts, and grainy drone footage images. Marion Hartley ran her trembling fingers through her ash-blonde hair, the same shade her daughter Olivia had inherited. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, evidence of another sleepless night spent searching for answers. Across from her sat Elena Cruz, whose normally immaculate appearance had given way to a messy ponytail and wrinkled blouse. Next to Elena was Natalie Dawson, whose fingers constantly fidgeted with her wedding ring as she stared at the photos scattered before them. Completing their circle was Danica White, who maintained her composure better than the others, but whose eyes betrayed the same desperate worry. Their daughters, Olivia Hartley, Jasmine Cruz, Claire Dawson, and Sophia White, had been best friends since high school. The girls had chosen to attend Southern Utah University together, sharing classes and dreams. Now they shared something else. They were all missing. "Mrs. Hartley," said FBI agent Philip Carter, his voice gentle but professional. "I understand your frustration, but I want to assure you we're pursuing every possible lead." His partner, Agent Rebecca Thompson, nodded in agreement, her expression sympathetic but guarded. "The problem is that we've found no evidence in Utah, nothing at the border checkpoints, and nothing in the surrounding states. Even in Texas, where they were last seen, the trail goes cold." "It's been 4 months," Marion said, her voice cracking. 4 months since they decided to take that detour to Texas." The weight of those 4 months hung in the air. What was supposed to be a simple university trip had turned into a nightmare. The entire class had been scheduled for an environmental volunteer effort at the Oregon Dunes National Recreation Area. But Olivia had received information from her marine research contact at a volunteer organization about a secluded beach in Texas where sea turtles laid eggs. The 4 girls had decided to visit Texas first before joining their classmates in Oregon. They never made it to Oregon. "We've interviewed everyone associated with the volunteer organization that arranged the Oregon trip," Agent Thompson explained. "We've searched the Texas coast where they were reportedly headed. We've checked hotel records, rental car agencies, gas stations, and traffic cameras." "What about their phones?" Danica asked, her voice steady despite her anguish. "There must be something." "Their phones went offline within an hour of each other on May 24th, Agent Carter replied. "The last ping came from near Corpus Christi, but the signal disappeared after that." From the kitchen, the sounds of the staff preparing for the day's business carried through the swinging doors. Meanwhile, on the walls of the dining area, dozens of flyers bearing the girls' photos surrounded them like silent witnesses to their ongoing ordeal. Suddenly, Agent Carter's phone rang. He stepped away from the table, his expression shifting from professional detachment to focused interest. The 4 mothers exchanged glances, a flicker of hope kindling in their exhausted eyes. They'd seen enough law enforcement responses over the past 4 months to recognize when something significant had occurred. When Agent Carter returned to the table, his posture had changed. "Ladies, we may have something." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The Texas Coast Guard has found evidence that might be related to your daughter's case. They discovered personal belongings in a shipping container on a freighter docked at the port of Brownsville." "What kind of belongings?" Elena asked, leaning forward with sudden intensity. "A pink suitcase, backpacks, and some other personal items that match the descriptions in our missing persons report," Agent Carter replied. "They're securing the scene now." "We need to go there," Marion said immediately, already standing up. We need to see if those are our daughter's things. Agent Thompson nodded. We can arrange transport. A flight to Brownsville would take about 3.5 hours. I'll close the diner for today, Marion said, determination replacing the fatigue in her eyes. Within an hour, preparations had been made. The four mothers packed small overnight bags, not knowing how long they would be gone, but understanding the urgency of the situation. Agent Carter coordinated with the local Cedar City Police and the FBI field office in Texas. By 7:30 a.m., they were boarding a small plane at Cedar City Regional Airport, with Agents Carter and Thompson accompanying them. The flight was tense and largely silent, each woman lost in her own thoughts, caught between hope that this might be the break they'd been waiting for and fear of what they might discover. When they landed in Brownsville shortly after 11 a.m. local time, police vehicles were waiting to escort them directly to the port. The convoy moved quickly through the city streets, arriving at a bustling scene of activity. Coast Guard officers, Port Authority personnel, local police, and shipping clerks swarmed around an area where a large red shipping container had been moved away from a freighter and set on the ground. Officer Curtis Prado of the Brownsville Police Department met them as they stepped out of their vehicles. Agent Carter, Agent Thompson, he greeted them with a professional nod before turning to the mothers. Ladies, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. He introduced them to Reuben Kim, a shipping clerk at the Port of Brownsville, who nervously adjusted his glasses as he explained the discovery. It was just routine inspection, Reuben said. We do random checks for contraband, and one of our K-9 units alerted on this container. When I checked the manifest, I noticed this container wasn't scheduled for shipment. It wasn't even supposed to be here. What did you find inside? Agent Carter asked. Reuben gestured toward the open doors of the container. Personal items, arranged like someone had been living there. Mattresses, suitcases, backpacks. The mothers moved closer, their hearts pounding as they approached the container. Just inside the doors, police had carefully arranged the items they'd found. A pink suitcase, 3 matching pink backpacks, a straw hat, and a brown leather handbag. Deeper in the container, they could see mattresses laid out on the floor, along with empty water bottles and canned food containers. Miss Hartley, Officer Prado said gently, can you identify any of these items? Marion stepped forward first, her hand trembling as she reached for the pink suitcase. This is Olivia's, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I bought it for her high school graduation, these scratch marks on the corner. She got them when we visited my sister in Denver last year. Elena pointed to the straw hat and one of the pink backpacks. This is Jasmine's hat. She bought it specially for this trip. And this backpack? See this charm? She touched a small silver dolphin attached to the zipper. I gave it to her for her birthday. One by one, each mother identified items belonging to their daughters. The matching pink backpacks had been a group purchase the girls had made together, but each had personalized them with unique charms or pins. The mattresses, Natalie said, looking deeper into the container. How long have they been here? A forensic technician who had been working inside the container stepped forward. Based on the condition and wear patterns, I'd estimate they've been used for quite some time. Definitely longer than 4 months. They may have been here before your daughters. Agent Carter nodded grimly. It appears someone was keeping them here and left in a hurry. Probably when they learned about the routine inspection. They abandoned the personal belongings, likely planning to return the girls to the container after the check was complete. Have you checked the port's security footage? Agent Thompson asked Officer Prado. Yes, but we haven't seen any sign of the girls in the area, Officer Prado replied. We believe the person who took them was aware of the inspection schedule and the location of the CCTV cameras. They likely moved the girls during the night. These containers were headed for Puerto Progreso in Mexico, Reuben added. We've already alerted the Mexican authorities. Marion stared into the dark interior of the container, trying to imagine her daughter confined in that space. "How many other containers like this might there be?" she asked, her voice hollow. "That's what we need to find out," Agent Carter said. "Officer Prado, we'll need to interview port workers and the freighter's crew. Someone had to have seen something." Officer Prado nodded. "We've already started gathering statements. In the meantime, forensics needs to process all of this evidence. Let's move to the harbor office where you can complete the necessary paperwork." As the forensic team moved in to collect fingerprints and DNA samples, the four mothers took one last look at their daughter's belongings before following the officers toward the harbor building. Each step away from the container felt like abandoning their children all over again, but they knew finding the truth was their only path forward. The harbor office buzzed with activity as the four mothers were escorted into a conference room. The walls were lined with maritime maps and safety protocols, and a large window overlooked the bustling port. Officer Prado handed them clipboards with forms to fill out. "Standard procedure," he explained. "We need your formal statements and authorization for DNA collection to compare with samples from the container." The mothers sat side by side at the long table, pens scratching against paper as they documented what they knew about their daughter's last known movements. The process felt painfully familiar after months of similar forms and statements. "How long will the lab analysis take?" Elena asked, her hand aching from writing. "We've expedited everything," Agent Carter replied. "The DNA comparisons could take a day or two, but fingerprint analysis should be faster. We've also got teams coordinating with Mexican Border Patrol and authorities at Puerto Progreso." After they completed the paperwork, they were asked to wait in an adjacent room until the lab technicians arrived to collect DNA samples. The waiting room had the same institutional feel as every other space they'd occupied during the search. Neutral walls, uncomfortable chairs, and the distinct sense of being in a place where bad news was commonplace. Marion stood by the window, gazing out at the port operations. Container ships loomed in the distance, while smaller vessels navigated the harbor. Cranes lifted massive containers, moving them like oversized building blocks. Somewhere among all that machinery and movement, her daughter might have been held captive for months. As her eyes tracked the activity, she noticed a man in a navy blue polo shirt talking to a port worker wearing sunglasses. Something about his posture and gesture made her pause. "Elena," she said quietly, not taking her eyes off the man. "Does that person look familiar to you?" Elena joined her at the window, followed by Natalie and Danica. "I can't place him," Elena said, squinting, "but there's something—" Natalie suddenly reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "Wait, I think I know who that is." She handed the card to Marion. "Brady Colborne. He's the CEO of Future Path Volunteers. Remember? They had a booth at that university event last semester." Marion examined the card. Future Path Volunteers was emblazoned across the top, with Brady Colborne, Chief Executive Officer, underneath. The organization's tagline read, "Changing Lives Through Compassionate Action." "That's right," Elena said, recognition dawning in her eyes. "They organized cultural exchange and humanitarian trips. That's the organization that set up the Oregon trip for the girls' class." "And Olivia's marine research contact," Marion added, her voice growing tight. "That was through Future Path. They were the ones who told her about the sea turtle nesting beach in Texas." The four women exchanged significant glances. "The police were aware of this. They already interviewed them," Danica suggested. "But now that Mr. Colborne is here, they might want to speak with him too." Marion looked back toward the conference room where the agents were reviewing their statements with Officer Prado. "They seem busy with the port authorities. Let's just say hello ourselves first. He might have some insight." "I'll come with you," Natalie offered. "Elena and Danica, tell the agents where we've gone if they come looking for us." Marion and Natalie left the harbor office and made their way across the concrete expanse toward Brady Colborne, who was still deep in conversation with the port worker. "Mr. Colborne?" Marion called as they approached. Brady turned, his expression momentarily freezing before shifting into a polite smile. "Yes? Can I help you?" "I'm Marion Hartley, and this is Natalie Dawson. We met at Southern Utah University last semester during the volunteer fair." Brady hesitated, studying their faces before recognition seemed to dawn. "Oh, yes, Cedar City, the university event. I remember now." His companion, the port worker with sunglasses, nodded curtly before walking away, clipboard in hand. "What brings you to Brownsville?" Marion asked, trying to keep her tone casual despite the suspicion building within her. Brady gestured vaguely toward a stack of containers in the distance. "Organizing supplies for a disaster relief shipment. We're sending medical equipment and food to communities affected by the hurricane in Central America." "That's quite a coincidence," Natalie said carefully. "We didn't expect to see anyone from Utah here." "What about you ladies?" Brady asked, his tone friendly, though his eyes lacked the warmth of his smile. "How's the police investigation in Utah going? You're not here on vacation, I assume?" Marion shook her head. "Number? Actually, the authorities just found some of their belongings in a shipping container here at the port." Brady's face paled slightly. "Here? The missing university students? That's shocking. You know, back then the FBI questioned everyone at Future Path since we arranged the Oregon trip." He shook his head solemnly. "Terrible situation. I'm so sorry." "The police are treating it as a criminal case now," Natalie added, watching his reaction carefully. "They found mattresses and personal belongings in the container. It looks like someone was keeping them there." Brady's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "That's horrific. I sincerely hope they find whoever's responsible." He glanced at his watch. "I should really get back to work. We have a tight schedule to meet for this shipment." "Of course," Marion said. "We won't keep you." "I wish you all the best with the investigation," Brady said, already backing away. "I hope they find your daughters soon." They watched as he hurried across the port area, his posture stiff and movements hurried. "Did he seem nervous to you?" Marion asked as they walked back to the harbor office. "Definitely," Natalie confirmed. "He could barely look us in the eye, and he couldn't get away fast enough." When they returned to the waiting room, Elena and Danica were deep in conversation. "What happened?" Elena asked. "He was off," Marion replied, keeping her voice low. "He claimed to be organizing disaster relief supplies, but he seemed really uncomfortable talking to us." "You know," Elena said, "I thought he was strange at that university event, too. He barely spoke to any of the parents, letting his staff do all the talking while he just stood there watching everyone." "Maybe he's just socially awkward," Danica suggested. "Not everyone is good with people, especially in sensitive situations like this." "That's true," Natalie conceded, "and Future Path didn't ask for excessive fees for the trip, just reasonable travel costs. Their programs seemed legitimate." "Still," Marion said, looking out the window again where she could see Brady talking urgently with the same port worker wearing sunglasses, "it's odd for a CEO to be personally handling shipping logistics, isn't it?" Their conversation was interrupted when Agent Carter and a lab technician entered the waiting room. "Ladies, we're ready to collect DNA samples," Agent Carter announced. "It's just a simple cheek swab." One by one, they provided samples, the technician carefully labeling each swab before placing it in a sealed container. "Agent Carter," Marion said after completing her sample, "the CEO of Future Path Volunteers is here at the port, Brady Colborne. We just spoke with him." Agent Carter raised an eyebrow. "Colborne? Here in Brownsville?" "He said he's organizing disaster relief supplies," Natalie explained, "but he seemed very uncomfortable when we mentioned the container." Agent Carter made a note in his notebook. "We've investigated Future Path thoroughly. Everything checked out. Proper registrations, transparent finances, legitimate operations. Colborne has cooperated fully with our investigation. Maybe you should talk to him anyway, Marion suggested. It's a strange coincidence. I'll look into it, Agent Carter promised. He stepped out briefly to speak with a port official, returning a few minutes later. I've confirmed that Mr. Colborne has legitimate business here. His signature is on the harbor logs for several containers of humanitarian supplies scheduled for shipment to Puerto Barrios in Guatemala. Nothing connected to the container where we found your daughter's belongings. The mothers exchanged glances, not entirely convinced, but lacking any concrete reason for their suspicion. What happens now? Elena asked, changing the subject. We'll continue processing the evidence, Agent Carter replied. In the meantime, I suggest you find accommodations in town. This might take several days. We'd like to stay close, Marion said firmly, for when you find something... Agent Carter nodded understandingly. If you're staying, at least let me help keep things safe. I'll arrange a rental car and find you suitable accommodations nearby. Officer Curtis, who had just entered the room, added, You're welcome to stay as long as needed. We'll work closely with you, and you can reach me any time if you need assistance while in town. The mothers nodded gratefully, all four determined to remain in Brownsville until they found answers, or hopefully their daughters. Marion, Elena, Natalie, and Danica followed Agent Carter out of the harbor office into the bright Texas afternoon sun. Officer Curtis had arranged for a patrol car to take them to a hotel near the port, where they checked into adjacent rooms. Get yourselves settled, Agent Carter suggested. I need to make a few calls, and then we'll get you a rental car so you can move around more freely. An hour later, they met Agent Carter in the hotel lobby. The mothers had freshened up, but the strain of the day's discoveries was still evident in their faces. There's a rental agency about 10 minutes from here, Agent Carter said, leading them to a waiting patrol car. I'll put the rental under my name and FBI credentials. It should speed up the process. The rental car facility was a small, family-owned operation set back from the main road in a commercial district. A weathered sign reading Gulf Coast Auto Rentals hung above the entrance. Inside, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair greeted them from behind a cluttered counter. Welcome to Gulf Coast Auto, he said warmly. I'm Mike Fletcher, the owner. How can I help you folks today? Agent Carter presented his credentials. We need a mid-sized vehicle for an indefinite period, possibly several days. Mike nodded, typing into his computer. I've got a 2023 Toyota Camry available. Should be comfortable for you ladies. While Mike processed the paperwork, Agent Carter led the group outside to inspect the vehicle. The car was clean and well-maintained, with less than 15,000 miles on the odometer. This will work fine, Agent Carter confirmed, signing the necessary forms when they returned inside. I'll just need a card for the deposit, Mike said, completing the transaction. As he handed over the keys, he added, Try to keep it clean and full of gas if you don't mind. We're a small operation, and detailing costs eat into our margins. We'll take good care of it, Marion assured him. Mike sighed, leaning against the counter. I appreciate that. Had some folks a while back who didn't show the same consideration. Returned one of my cars in terrible shape. What happened? Agent Carter asked, professional curiosity piqued. Group of young men rented one of my SUVs about 6 months ago. When they brought it back, it was a disaster. Dents and scratches on the exterior, interior filthy with sand and trash. Didn't even bother to refill the gas tank. Mike shook his head at the memory. Cost me nearly $2,000 to fix everything, but they paid the damages without complaint, which was the only silver lining. The mothers exchanged quick glances, a silent communication that had developed over months of shared anguish. 6 months ago? Marion asked casually. That would have been around May or June? End of May, Mike confirmed. Memorial Day weekend, actually. Remember, because I was short on vehicles during a busy holiday. Natalie stepped forward. Would you mind showing us some photos of the damage? We're curious about what kind of restoration work was needed." Mike looked bewildered by the request, but Agent Carter smoothly intervened. "We're investigating a case that might involve similar vehicle misuse. Any information could be helpful." Understanding dawned on Mike's face. "Oh, you're with the FBI. Sure, I documented everything for the insurance claim." He pulled out his smartphone and scrolled through his photos. "Here we go." He handed the phone to Agent Carter, who examined the images before passing it to the mothers. The photos showed an SUV with scratched paint and dented panels. More disturbing were the interior shots: seats covered in sand, empty food containers scattered throughout, and what appeared to be plastic wrappers partially hidden under the seats. Elena pointed to one of the images. "Can you zoom in on that?" Mike took the phone back and enlarged the photo. The mothers leaned in, recognizing the distinctive packaging of male contraceptives among the debris. "Do you remember who rented this car?" Agent Carter asked, his tone still casual, but his attention now fully engaged. Mike turned to his computer. "Let me check our records." After a moment, he nodded. "Here it is. Guy named Danny Rosso. Rented it for 5 days starting May 23rd, but didn't return it until May 30th. Charged him a late fee on top of the damage deposit." The timing aligned perfectly with when the girls had gone missing. Agent Carter pulled out his notebook, jotting down the information. "Did Mr. Rosso say anything about what happened to the vehicle?" Agent Carter asked. Mike shook his head. "That's what was strange. Most people have some excuse or story, but this guy barely spoke, just handed over his credit card for the charges, signed the forms, and left. Never saw him again." "Do you have his information on file?" Agent Carter asked. "Contact details, address, that sort of thing?" "Sure do. Required for all rentals." Mike turned the monitor toward them. "Danny Rosso, age 28, with a Brownsville address. Got his driver's license number, phone, everything." Agent Carter pulled out his cell phone. "I need to call this in." He stepped outside while the mothers continued to look at the rental information. "You think there's a connection?" Mike asked, watching their intense focus on his computer screen. "We're not sure," Marion answered honestly. "But our daughters went missing around the same time this car was rented. However, they didn't specifically go to Brownsville. They were at South Padre Island." Mike's expression softened with understanding. "The 4 college girls from Utah? I saw that on the news. I'm so sorry." "We found their belongings today," Natalie explained, "in a shipping container at the Brownsville port." Mike's eyes widened. "Jesus, you think this Danny Rosso had something to do with it?" "We don't know," Elena replied. "But the timing matches, and the condition of the car is suspicious, and the late return. We're considering everything." Agent Carter returned, his expression serious. "I've notified the Brownsville PD. They're sending officers to check the vehicle. Even after 6 months, there might be trace evidence we can recover." "The car's been cleaned and repainted," Mike warned. "Used multiple times since then." "Modern forensic techniques can still detect biological material months or even years later," Agent Carter explained, "especially if it's soaked into upholstery or settled in crevices." Mike nodded, printing out the rental agreement. "Here's everything we have on Danny Rosso. Hope it helps." Agent Carter took the document, folding it carefully into his jacket pocket. "Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. You've been very helpful." As they prepared to leave, Mike called after them. "If only I'd known back then that something might be wrong. I would have reported it." "You couldn't have known," Danica assured him. "But you're helping now, and that's what matters." They left the rental office with mixed emotions, anxiety over what the new lead might reveal, but also a spark of hope that they were finally making progress. "What now?" Marion asked as they reached the rental car. "It's getting late," Agent Carter replied, checking his watch. "You 4 should get some rest. I'll stay and coordinate with the forensic team when they arrive to examine the rental vehicle. We'll update you on any findings." "Tomorrow?" Natalie asked. "Tomorrow we'll search the coastline again," Agent Carter confirmed. "With these new leads, we have better focus areas. The beach isn't far from the port." The mothers reluctantly agreed, understanding the need for rest after their emotionally draining day. They got into their rental car, with Marion behind the wheel, and headed back toward their hotel, each lost in thoughts of what tomorrow might bring. It was past lunchtime, nearly 3 p.m., when Marion found herself staring at the ceiling of her hotel room, unable to rest despite her exhaustion. Next door, she could hear the murmur of Elena and Danica's voices. Natalie sat in the armchair by the window, absently scrolling through her phone. "I can't just sit here," Marion announced suddenly, sitting up. "We still have plenty of daylight left." Natalie looked up from her phone. "What are you thinking?" "The girls came to Texas because of a beach where sea turtles nest, right? Olivia's marine research contact at Future Path told them about it." Marion reached for her shoes. "What if we check out some of the nearby beaches, just to see the area, get a feel for where they might have been?" "We should wait for Agent Carter," Natalie hesitated. "He said we'd search the coastline tomorrow." "Tomorrow could be too late," Marion insisted. "If there's any connection between Brady Colburn, that Danny Russo character, and what happened to our girls, I want to see it for myself." Natalie considered this for a moment before nodding slowly. "That's unlikely, but okay, let's talk to Elena and Danica." They knocked on the adjoining door, finding the other two mothers poring over a local map they'd obtained from the hotel lobby. "We were just discussing dinner options," Elena said, looking up. "There's a seafood place down the road that the receptionist recommended." "Actually," Marion began, "Natalie and I were thinking of checking out one of the local beaches, the one the girls might have visited for the sea turtle research." Danica frowned. "But they didn't come to Brownsville. They were supposed to go to South Padre Island for the marine research, according to what Sophia told me before they left." "True, but we're here now, and there might be something similar along this coastline," Marion persisted. I need to do something active. I can't sit in this room waiting." Elena and Danica exchanged concerned glances. "I understand," Elena said gently. "But we're all exhausted, and Agent Carter specifically asked us to rest." "You two can stay here," Natalie suggested, seeing the fatigue in their eyes. "Marion and I will just take a quick drive, maybe walk along the shoreline for a bit. We'll be back for dinner." After some discussion, they reached a compromise. Elena and Danica would stay behind to rest and shop for necessities at the nearby convenience store, while Marion and Natalie would explore the local beach briefly. The mothers parted ways in the hotel parking lot. Marion and Natalie got into their rental car, with Natalie inputting Boca Chica Beach into the GPS after a quick search for nearby beaches. "It's only about 20 minutes from here," she said, as they pulled onto the main road. The drive took them south of Brownsville, past increasingly sparse development, until they reached a 2-lane road bordered by scrubby vegetation. Dunes rose in the distance, and the sound of crashing waves grew louder as they approached. They parked in a small, nearly empty lot and made their way toward the beach. As they crested a dune, the Gulf of Mexico spread before them, a vast expanse of blue-gray water meeting a wide, sandy shore. The beach wasn't a pristine paradise like tourist brochures might advertise, but it had a wild, untamed beauty with its dunes and native vegetation. Near the beach entrance, a weathered wooden sign caught their attention. "Sea turtle nesting season, April, September. Report turtles immediately." Marion stopped, studying the sign. "Do you think this could be the beach they were told about?" Natalie shook her head. "It couldn't be. The plans Claire showed me definitely mentioned South Padre Island, not Boca Chica." "You're right," Marion conceded, remembering the itinerary Olivia had sent her. "Maybe the turtle nesting habitats run along this whole coastline." They continued walking, the afternoon sun warm against their backs as they followed the shoreline. After about 15 minutes, they noticed a section of beach that looked significantly cleaner than the surrounding areas. A group of people moved methodically across the sand, some in casual clothes and others in matching turquoise T-shirts with an environmental organization's logo. As Marion and Natalie paused to watch the cleanup effort, a young woman in one of the turquoise shirts approached them, trash pick in hand. "Hi there, I'm Ilona," she greeted them with a friendly smile. "Are you here to join our beach cleanup?" "No, just taking a walk," Marion replied. "But it's wonderful what you're doing here." "Thanks. We do this weekly," Ilona explained. "We're with coastal keepers. The turtles and local wildlife suffer terribly from beach pollution." "It's a free event if you'd like to join," she added. "You can leave whenever you need to, no commitment necessary." "That's very kind, but we're just here to rest and look around," Natalie said. As they spoke, a young man with sandy brown hair and an easy smile joined them. "More volunteers?" he asked hopefully. "Just visitors," Ilona corrected. "This is Darren, one of our regular volunteers." Darren nodded a greeting, shifting his trash pick from hand to hand. Something about the casual conversation made Marion want to open up. "Actually, we're here because of a police investigation. Our daughters went missing 6 months ago, but the police just found a new lead today." Ilona's face fell. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Darren stilled, his casual demeanor giving way to something more guarded. He stared at the ground, poking his pike into the sand repeatedly. "That's terrible," he mumbled, not meeting their eyes. "I hope they find them. I should get back to work." Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked quickly back toward the other volunteers. Ilona watched him go with a puzzled expression before turning back to the mothers. "Don't mind Darren, he's a bit awkward around emotional topics, but we're all hoping for the best for your daughters." Marion changed the subject, gesturing around the beach. "Has this area always been this littered?" Ilona sighed deeply. "It's gotten worse in the last year or so. This beach is remote enough that it attracts people looking for privacy. We find evidence of illegal bonfires almost weekly, despite the turtle habitat protections." She pointed to a collection basket filled with trash. Beer bottles, food wrappers, and, well, evidence of other activities. Among the debris, several distinctive contraceptive wrappers were visible, identical to those they'd seen in the rental car photos. "The city posts a guard during daylight hours," Ilona continued. "But at night, it's unmonitored. That's when most of the damage happens." "Is this a regular occurrence?" Natalie asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Not daily, but several times a month for sure. It's usually groups of young people, college-aged mostly." Ilona gestured southward. "If you walk far enough that way, you'll reach the Rio Grande Channel and Baghdad Lighthouse. That's the Mexican border. We sometimes find evidence that people cross over for parties, which complicates enforcement." After chatting a few more minutes, Ilona excused herself to rejoin her group. Marion and Natalie walked a little further down the beach, speaking in hushed tones. "Did you see those wrappers?" Natalie whispered. "The same brand as in the rental car photos." "Do you think the girls were brought here for some kind of party?" Marion asked. They both fell silent, the implications too unsettling to put into words. Then Natalie spoke up. "I think we're just dealing with information overload today. We're starting to connect things that might not even be related." Marion nodded. After walking for an hour or so along the coastline, finding nothing but endless stretches of largely empty beach, they turned to head back. Marion noticed Darren walking away from the cleanup group, his phone pressed to his ear. With the breeze carrying sound across the open beach, fragments of his conversation drifted toward them. "No chase sight. No party. No." A pause. "I checked. It's clean." "Yes? Keep clean." When he finished the call, Darren slipped on a pair of black sunglasses, and something about his profile in that moment struck Marion with uncomfortable familiarity. "Natalie," she whispered, "doesn't Darren look like that port worker who was talking to Brady this morning? The one wearing sunglasses?" Natalie squinted in his direction. "I don't think so. We were talking to him face to face earlier, and you didn't mention any resemblance then." "I know, but something about the way he's standing now and those sunglasses, they just look similar." Marion couldn't shake the feeling. "You know that men in sunglasses often look alike, right?" Natalie said. He had called her, and they decided to head back. As they passed the area, the cleanup volunteers were packing up, and Darren was nowhere in sight. With more questions than answers, they returned to their rental car and headed back to the hotel, the potential connection between the contraceptive wrappers, the dirty rental car, and a remote beach weighing heavily on their minds. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the hotel parking lot as Marion and Natalie returned from their beach excursion. They found Elena and Danica waiting for them in the lobby, shopping bags at their feet. "We were starting to worry," Elena said, checking her watch. "It's almost sunset." "Sorry," Marion apologized. "We lost track of time." They gathered their purchases and headed to Marion and Natalie's room, where they spread out a simple dinner of pre-made sandwiches, fruit, and bottled water on the small table by the window. As they ate, Marion and Natalie recounted their visit to Boca Chica Beach and the cleanup volunteers they'd met. "The beach itself isn't anything special," Natalie explained. "It's secluded, with lots of dunes and scrubby vegetation. Not the kind of place tourists would typically visit." "But that's apparently what makes it attractive for parties," Marion added. "Ilona, one of the volunteers, told us they regularly find evidence of nighttime gatherings. Beer bottles, trash, and even those plastic contraceptive wrappers, just like in the rental car photos." Elena and Danica exchanged a significant look. "That's interesting," Elena said slowly, "because while you were gone, we overheard something in the lobby that might be connected." Danica nodded. "When we were walking back from the store, we saw two women in the lobby, mid-20s, I'd guess. They were being approached by two young men who were talking about a hidden gem beach and a party tonight." "A party?" Natalie frowned. "But we're not here for a holiday." "That's not the point," Marion said, leaning forward. "What was the beach called? Did you hear?" "Brazos Island Park, I think," Danica replied. "I looked it up while we were waiting for you. It's actually a continuation of Boca Chica Beach, just a bit further down." Marion turned to Natalie. "That's the area we walked through. Remember when Ilona pointed south? She mentioned the Rio Grande Channel and the Mexican border." "And remember that phone call we overheard?" Natalie added, eyes widening with realization. "Darren said, 'No party tonight,' and something about keeping the site clean." The four women fell silent, each processing the implications of these connections. "Wait," Elena cautioned, raising a hand. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We don't know that any of this is related to our daughters." "But the timing fits," Marion countered. "The contraceptive wrappers match what was found in Danny Rosso's rental car. That car was returned filthy with sand and trash around the same time our girls disappeared, and now we have evidence of beach parties in a secluded location near the Mexican border." "Plus that volunteer Darren and Brady Colborn," she added. "Something feels off about both of them. They might not be related, but I just got this strange feelings." Danica sighed, rubbing her temples. "Even if there is a connection, what can we do? We're not law enforcement. If you're thinking about going back to that beach tonight—" "That's exactly what I'm thinking," Marion admitted. The room grew quiet again. The only sound was the distant hum of the air conditioner. "We should tell Agent Carter," Elena suggested reasonably. "Let him and the local police handle this. And by the time they mobilize, whoever's behind this might disappear again," Marion argued. "We've been searching for 4 months with nothing to show for it until today." They continued debating for the next hour, weighing the risks against the potential for discovering something crucial. Eventually, they separated to their respective rooms to rest, though rest seemed impossible with so many unanswered questions. As the sun began to set, Marion stood by the window of her room, watching the orange glow reflect off the distant Gulf waters. Natalie sat on the edge of her bed, flipping through TV channels without really watching. "I'm going back to the beach," Marion announced suddenly, turning from the window. "Just to observe from a distance. I won't interfere or put myself in danger." Natalie looked up, concern etched across her face. "Marion, I understand how you feel, but—" "I won't be able to sleep tonight otherwise," Marion interrupted, "not with this gnawing feeling that we're close to something important." After a long moment, Natalie sighed and stood up. "I'm coming with you. We'll just check it out briefly and return before it gets too dark." "Are you sure?" Marion asked, relief evident in her voice. "Absolutely not," Natalie replied with a wry smile. "But I'm not letting you go alone." Marion crossed the room and hugged her friend tightly. "Thank you." "We should tell Elena and Danica," Natalie said as they separated. "They'll worry if they try to check on us and we're gone." When they knocked on the adjoining door, they found the other two mothers also unable to rest. Despite their initial protests, Elena and Danica ultimately decided to join them. "If we're doing this, we stick together," Elena insisted. "4 sets of eyes are better than 2. "And we'll be safer as a group," Danica added pragmatically. They agreed on a plan: drive to the beach, observe from a safe distance, and return to the hotel immediately if they saw anything suspicious or dangerous. They would not approach anyone or draw attention to themselves. Their only goal was to gather information that might help find their daughters. "If nothing happens by sunset, we come back," Marion promised. "This isn't about taking risks. It's about not missing an opportunity." As they prepared to leave, each woman carried the weight of their missing daughter's absence alongside a spark of determination. For the first time in months, they felt they were taking action rather than simply waiting for news. Whether that action would lead to answers remained to be seen, but the alternative, doing nothing, was no longer acceptable. With resolute expressions, they left the hotel room and headed for their rental car, the evening sky deepening to purple behind them. The parking area at Boca Chica Beach was nearly deserted when they arrived, with only a few motorcycles and a white van occupying spaces near the entrance. The sun had disappeared from the horizon, painting the sky in deepening shades of indigo and black. "If there's a beach party happening, it doesn't look like it's started yet," Elena observed as they pulled into a spot at the far end of the lot. "Maybe we're early or late," Danica suggested, checking her watch. "Or we misunderstood what those men in the lobby were talking about." Marion scanned the area carefully. "Let's walk toward the beach and see if there's any activity. If there's nothing, we'll head back." They made their way over the dunes toward the shoreline, the evening breeze carrying the salty scent of the Gulf. The beach appeared empty, especially the area where the cleanup volunteers had been working earlier. No party set up, no bonfires, no groups of people, just the endless stretch of sand meeting darkening waters. "This feels like a waste of time," Elena said after they'd walked for about 10 minutes. "There's nothing here." Just as they were about to turn back, a figure approached from the direction of the parking lot. A man in his late 20s with neatly trimmed hair and dressed in dark jeans and a button-up shirt walked toward them, his posture tense. "Hello there," he called, his voice friendly, but his eyes watchful. "Are you ladies here for the event?" The mothers exchanged quick glances. "What event?" Natalie asked casually. The man looked confused, studying each of their faces before his shoulders relaxed slightly. "Oh, I thought... Never mind. It's just a small private gathering, a friend's birthday celebration with a bonfire, not really a party per se." An awkward silence followed before he spoke again. "I'm Danny, by the way. Sorry for not introducing myself sooner." Marion felt her heart skip a beat at the name, but kept her expression neutral. "Nice to meet you, Danny. We're just visiting the area and thought we'd check out the beach at sunset." Danny nodded, a hint of relief crossing his features. It's lovely at this time of day, though it's getting dark quite quickly now, and there's not much lighting out here." "We were just about to head back," Danica said, forcing a smile. "It's a bit too dark to see much." "Probably for the best," Danny agreed, his voice softening. "The beach can be disorienting after dark. You should return to your vehicle while there's still some light." As they thanked him and began walking back toward the parking lot, Marion couldn't help noticing how eager he seemed for them to leave. His politeness had a practiced quality that felt hollow. Once they were out of earshot, Elena whispered, "Did you see how nervous he was? When we said we weren't here for whatever is happening, he looked relieved." "And he didn't really try to explain what this gathering is," Natalie added. "Just said it was private and basically told us to leave." "Do you think he's the same Danny?" Danica asked. "Danny Rosso, who rented that car?" Marion frowned. "It's a common name, but the timing and location feel too coincidental." They reached their car and climbed in, with Marion taking the driver's seat again. She started the engine, slowly pull out of the parking space. "I have a bad feeling," she murmured. "I want to see if anything happens, but I don't want to risk our safety." They drove in silence, watching as two more vehicles arrived, a pickup truck and a dark sedan. 4 men got out, carrying coolers and what looked like camping equipment toward the beach. "This doesn't look like just a birthday celebration," Elena murmured. Danica, who had been watching through the rear window, suddenly gasped. "Marion, slow down." "What is it?" Marion asked, her foot pausing over the gas pedal. "I think I just saw those 2 women from the hotel," Danica said, her voice tight with concern. "They were walking from the beach, not to, and being held by the arms, almost like they were being pushed toward that white van." Before any of them could respond, headlights swept across their car as another vehicle pulled into the lot from the main road. As it passed under the single parking lot light, Marion recognized the driver. "That's Darren," she said in disbelief, "the volunteer from earlier today?" When the interior light briefly illuminated the passenger, Natalie grabbed Marion's arm. "And that's Brady Colburn with him." The connections crystallized in Marion's mind. Danny at the beach, Darren who resembled the port worker, and now Brady Colburn, all converging at this remote location where parties apparently happened regularly. Their daughters had disappeared after allegedly being invited to a beach party. The rental car returned filthy with sand and contraceptive wrappers. The container at the port with mattresses and their daughters' belongings. "We need to call Agent Carter," Natalie said, already reaching for her phone. Marion nodded, accelerated the car again, and carefully drove out of the parking lot. She drove until they reached the main road, then pulled over in a safe spot with a clear view of both the beach entrance and the road ahead. While Natalie spoke urgently with Agent Carter, explaining what they'd witnessed, Marion watched as the white van and Brady's car exited the beach parking lot and headed north, away from Brownsville. "Agent Carter says what we did was dangerous," Natalie reported after ending the call. "He's sending police units, but he wants us to return to the hotel immediately." Marion gripped the steering wheel tightly, watching the taillights of the van and Brady's car growing smaller in the distance. "Those vehicles are leaving. If we go back now, we might lose them." "Marion, this isn't our job," Elena cautioned. "We should let the professionals handle it." "Agent Carter specifically said to stay in crowded areas," Natalie added, "not to follow potentially dangerous suspects." Marion turned to look at each of them, resolve hardening in her eyes. "I understand if you want to go back, but I need to see where they're going. I can drop you off." The other 3 women exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. "We stay together," Danica said firmly, "but promise me we'll keep our distance and not do anything reckless." Marion nodded, putting the car in drive. "I promise. We'll just follow far enough to see their destination, then wait for the police." With that, she pulled back onto the road and headed north, following the distant taillights of the vehicles that might lead them to their missing daughters. The two vehicles ahead maintained a steady pace on the darkening highway, their taillights like red beacons guiding Marion forward. She kept her distance, staying several car lengths behind and dimming her headlights to avoid drawing attention. "They're heading away from town," Elena noted, tension evident in her voice. "This road leads into more remote areas." "Keep your phone ready," Marion instructed Natalie. "If we lose cell service, we'll need to turn back immediately." For 20 minutes, they followed the winding coastal road as it veered away from the Gulf and into sparser territory. The landscape transformed from beach communities to stretches of scrubland punctuated by occasional commercial developments. "They're slowing down," Danica said, leaning forward from the back seat. Ahead, the van and Brady's car pulled into a gas station, a small illuminated island in the growing darkness. The neon sign reading Lone Star Fuel and Food flickered intermittently, casting an eerie glow over the forecourt. Marion drove past without slowing, then made a U-turn at the next intersection and parked on the shoulder about 200 yards away with a clear view of the gas station, but hopefully far enough to avoid detection. "What are they doing?" Elena whispered, though there was no possibility of being overheard at this distance. They watched as Danny got out of the van and began filling the tank while Darren and Brady exited the sedan and headed into the convenience store. Through the large windows of the store, they could see Danny join them a few minutes later, leaning casually against the counter where a female cashier stood. Even from a distance, his body language suggested flirtation. The casual lean, the animated gestures, the way the cashier tucked her hair behind her ear and laughed. "This doesn't look like the behavior of people in a hurry," Natalie observed. "They don't realize they've been spotted," Danica suggested. After paying, the three men exited the store with Darren carrying a plastic bag of purchases. Instead of getting back into their vehicles immediately, Danny walked to the rear of the van and opened the trunk. He removed what appeared to be license plates and handed a set to Brady, who proceeded to replace the plates on his sedan. "They're changing the license plates," Marion said in disbelief, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Mexican plates," Natalie added, squinting through the darkness. "This confirms they're crossing the border." Elena pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Agent Carter again. This is definitive criminal activity." Before she could dial, headlights appeared behind them as a vehicle pulled up and parked. Through her rearview mirror, Marion recognized the unmarked car that had been at the port earlier that day. Agent Carter and his partner stepped out and approached cautiously. Natalie lowered her window as Agent Carter reached the car. "We told you to return to the hotel," he said, his expression stern but concerned. "This situation is dangerous, and you're civilians." "They're changing their license plates to Mexican ones," Marion explained quickly. "If we'd gone back, you wouldn't have seen this." Agent Carter's jaw tightened as he glanced toward the gas station. "We'll take over from here. We'll follow them to see where they're headed. Our backup units are en route." "What about the women we saw being forced into the van?" Danica asked. "We have officers checking the beach area now," Agent Carter assured them. "But my priority is making sure you four are safe." The four mothers watched as Danny, Darren, and Brady finished their preparations and returned to their vehicles. "They're leaving," Marion said, starting her car again. "We can't lose them." Agent Carter placed a hand on her door. "Number. You need to return to Brownsville now. That's not a suggestion. It's for your safety and the integrity of this operation." "But," Marion began. "No buts," Agent Carter interrupted firmly. "We've got this. Go back to the hotel and wait for my call." As Agent Carter returned to his vehicle, the mothers watched the van and sedan pull out of the gas station and continue north. The unmarked FBI car followed at a discreet distance, its headlights dimmed just as Marion's had been. "What do we do now?" Elena asked as the vehicles disappeared around a bend. Marion sat in silence for a moment, her heart racing with the knowledge that they might be close to finding their daughters, or at least discovering what had happened to them. "Agent Carter is right," Natalie said softly. "This isn't our expertise. We could end up making things worse." Marion tightened her grip on the steering wheel. "I can't turn back now, not when we're this close." "I agree," Danica said from the back seat, surprising the others. 4 months of waiting and hoping. I need to see this through. "We could stay far behind Agent Carter's car," Elena suggested cautiously. "Just to know where they're going." The decision made, Marion pulled back onto the road, following the same direction as the other vehicles, but maintaining an even greater distance than before. The weight of their choice hung heavy in the car, mingled with desperate hope that this night would finally bring answers. The road continued to twist through increasingly remote terrain. Street lights became rare, and businesses gave way to industrial facilities and vacant lots. Marion maintained a careful distance behind Agent Carter's vehicle, which itself stayed well behind the van and sedan. "They're turning," Elena whispered, pointing to where the vehicles ahead made a right onto an unmarked dirt road. Instead of following directly, Agent Carter's car continued straight before making a turn onto a parallel access road. Marion followed his lead, her headlights off now, using only the ambient moonlight to navigate. "Smart," Natalie murmured. "He's positioning to observe without being detected." They came to a stop behind a small rise that provided cover while offering a clear view of what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse about a quarter-mile away. The dilapidated structure stood isolated against the night sky, a single security light illuminating the loading dock area where the van and sedan had parked. Through the car windows, they saw Agent Carter speak briefly on his radio before exiting his vehicle with his partner, both drawing their weapons as they took positions behind natural cover. The mothers watched in tense silence as activity unfolded at the warehouse. The loading dock doors opened, spilling yellow light onto the concrete apron. Several figures emerged from inside, 2 of them pushing what appeared to be gurneys or stretchers. "Those are people," Danica gasped, clutching Elena's arm. "They're moving people." Even from this distance, they could see the horrifying scene. Young women, their limbs visibly bound and eyes covered, were being transferred from the warehouse into the waiting van. The men worked with practiced efficiency, suggesting this wasn't their first such operation. Marion's phone vibrated. It was Agent Carter. "We can see what's happening," she answered, without preamble. "Those are people they're loading." "Backup is 3 minutes out," Agent Carter replied, his voice tight. "Listen carefully. I need you to stay put. Do not approach. Do not make yourselves visible. Is that clear?" "Completely clear," Marion assured him. "Wait, I just remembered something. When we were at the beach earlier, we overheard Darren on the phone. He mentioned something about Noche. Could that be where they're planning to take these girls?" There was a pause on the line. "Noche is a town just across the Mexican border. If they get these women there, it will be much harder to rescue them." His voice grew urgent as he spoke to someone else. "We can't wait for backup. If they leave for Noche, we lose them?" The line went dead as multiple police vehicles suddenly appeared on the main road, lights flashing but sirens silent. Officer Curtis's cruiser led the way, followed by 3 more patrol cars and an unmarked SUV. The raid happened with shocking speed. Agent Carter and his partner moved from their cover position while police vehicles converged on the warehouse from multiple directions, cutting off escape routes. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness as officers surrounded the building. "FBI! Police! Hands up!" The commands echoed across the empty landscape. Chaos erupted at the loading dock. Brady and Darren froze in place, raising their hands immediately, but Danny dove behind the van. When he reappeared seconds later, the metallic glint of a handgun was visible in his hand. "Gun!" an officer shouted. A single shot cracked through the night air, followed by a brief, terrible silence. Danny crumpled to the ground as officers rushed forward. The mothers watched the scene unfold with horror and hope intermingled. Police officers poured into the warehouse, while others secured Brady and Darren, forcing them to the ground and handcuffing them. More officers approached the van, carefully extracting the bound women inside. "We need to get closer," Marion said, starting the car. "Agent Carter said to stay here," Elena reminded her. "That was before the shooting," Marion countered. "It's secure now, and our daughters might be in there." She drove slowly toward the warehouse, parking at a safe distance where officers directed them to stop. Multiple ambulances arrived, their red and blue lights casting surreal patterns across the desolate landscape. The mothers approached on foot, identifying themselves to a perimeter officer who radioed for confirmation before allowing them through. The scene inside the warehouse was even more disturbing than they had imagined. Beyond the loading area, the building had been divided into makeshift cells. Medical personnel were attending to more than a dozen young women, most appearing disoriented and frightened. In one corner, officers were gently coaxing several terrified young children from a locked room. "Olivia?" Marion called, scanning the faces of the victims. "Olivia!" "Mom?" a weak voice responded from across the room. The four mothers rushed forward as officers led them to a section where their daughters sat huddled together on metal folding chairs. Olivia, Jasmine, Claire, and Sophia looked pale and thin, their eyes unfocused, bodies swaying slightly, as if maintaining balance required conscious effort. "They're heavily sedated," a paramedic explained as the mothers embraced their children. "We need to transport them to the hospital immediately." "What have they done to you?" Elena sobbed, cradling Jasmine's face in her hands. Sophia tried to speak, but couldn't form coherent sentences, her words slurring together incomprehensibly. "We'll get them stabilized," the paramedic assured them, "but we need to move now." Agent Carter approached, holstering his weapon. "Go with your daughters. Officer Curtis and I will meet you at the hospital after we secure the scene and begin processing these monsters." As the paramedics helped the girls onto stretchers and into waiting ambulances, Marion looked back at the warehouse one last time. In the harsh emergency lights, she could see Brady Colburn sitting handcuffed in a police cruiser, his head bowed. The respected CEO of Future Path Volunteers, the man who had smiled at university events and offered exciting opportunities to young students, was revealed at last for what he truly was. The hospital waiting room was a stark contrast to the warehouse, clean, brightly lit, and secure. Yet for the four mothers, the antiseptic smell and institutional beige walls only heightened their anxiety as they waited for news about their daughters. "The doctor said it will take some time," Elena explained, pacing the small area. "They're processing multiple patients and running toxicology screens to identify what drugs are in their systems." Marion sat rigidly in a vinyl chair, her eyes fixed on the double doors leading to the emergency department. After months of searching and hours of frantic pursuit, she found the waiting almost unbearable. "At least we found them," she whispered, more to herself than the others. "They're alive." The words hung in the air, carrying both gratitude and dread. Alive, yes. But in what condition? What horrors had they endured during these 4 months? Shortly after midnight, Officer Curtis arrived with Agent Carter. Their expressions were grim but professional as they approached the mothers. "We need to take your statements while everything is fresh," Officer Curtis explained. "I know this is difficult timing, but it's important for building our case." The women were led to a small conference room off the main waiting area. One by one, they recounted the day's events from their individual perspectives, finding the container at the port, encountering Brady Colburn, discovering the rental car connection, exploring Boca Chica Beach, and their decision to follow the suspicious vehicles. When it was Marion's turn, she added, "The woman at the beach cleanup, Ilona, she seemed genuine. I don't think she knew about Darren's involvement." Officer Curtis nodded, making notes. "We'll interview all the Coastal Keepers volunteers. It's possible Darren used legitimate organizations as cover for their operations." After taking their statements, Agent Carter provided the first comprehensive explanation of what they'd uncovered. Based on preliminary interrogation and evidence found at the warehouse, we've confirmed that Brady Colborn and his associates were running a sophisticated human trafficking operation, he explained. They targeted young women for abduction and smuggling into Mexico, where they would be exploited in the sex trade. Future Path Volunteers was the perfect cover, Officer Curtis added. It gave them access to college campuses across the country, including Southern Utah University. They used those trips as scouting missions to identify potential victims, particularly those who seemed isolated or vulnerable. Natalie covered her mouth with her hand. And our daughters were specifically targeted? Agent Carter nodded solemnly. Brady identified them at the university event. The detour to Texas for sea turtle research was engineered specifically to separate them from the larger group going to Oregon. What happened to them in that container? Danica asked, her voice breaking. From what we've gathered, they were initially held at a property near Corpus Christi, Agent Carter explained. When local police increased patrols in that area following your missing persons report, they moved your daughters to the shipping container at the port. Brady had positioned his people while he kept a low profile, including Darren, as workers at the port, Officer Curtis continued. That gave them access to monitor the container and know when inspections were scheduled. When they learned about the K-9 units coming through, they had to relocate your daughters quickly, leaving their belongings behind. A nurse appeared at the door, interrupting their discussion. The doctors have finished their initial examinations. Your daughters are awake and asking for you. They're being moved to rooms 315 and 316. On the third floor, they found the girls situated in adjoining rooms, Olivia and Claire in one, Jasmine and Sophia in the other. At Jasmine and Sophia's request, hospital staff had brought wheelchairs so all 4 girls could be together for their conversation with investigators. The reunion was both joyful and heartbreaking. The girls were thin and pale, with hollowed eyes that spoke of prolonged trauma. Yet seeing their mothers brought genuine smiles to their faces, the first real indication that recovery was possible. When they were settled, Officer Curtis asked gently if they felt able to share what had happened. After exchanging glances, Olivia began speaking for the group. We were in Port Aransas for the Turtle Conservation Project, she explained, her voice weak but determined. On our second day, we met some guys at a local cafe who seemed really friendly. They invited us to a bonfire party at what they called a hidden gem beach, supposedly a beautiful spot that tourists didn't know about. Claire continued the story. When we got there, it wasn't what we expected. The beach was remote and kind of rough, not beautiful at all. But they had set up a minibar with fancy cocktails and music. They said they were celebrating a friend's birthday. We had a few drinks, Jasmine added, but we got drunk really fast. I remember feeling strange, like the room was spinning after just one cocktail. They must have drugged us. The next thing I remember is waking up in a moving truck, Sophia said, tears forming in her eyes. It was completely dark. We were taken to a house first, somewhere isolated. Brady was there. He told us that we belonged to him now. The girls fell silent, the unspoken horrors hanging in the air. You don't have to continue if it's too difficult, Agent Carter said gently. No, I want to, Olivia insisted. People need to know what they did. She explained how they were kept in the house for what felt like weeks, subjected to psychological and physical abuse designed to break their resistance. Eventually, they were moved to the shipping container, which, despite its confines, had felt safer because they were no longer being regularly abused. Darren would bring us food and water every few days, Claire explained, mostly canned stuff and bottled water. We never knew when he'd come back, so we had to ration everything. We thought we were on a ship sometimes, Sophia added. We could feel movement occasionally, but we were never sure where we were. The police interview continued gently, with breaks whenever the girls seemed overwhelmed. A doctor came in periodically to check their condition, explaining to the mothers that all four suffered from malnutrition and dehydration. Claire and Sophia had developed respiratory problems from the container's poor ventilation. Olivia was being treated for a reproductive tract infection, and Jasmine had developed a skin condition from the unsanitary conditions. "They'll need time to heal physically," the doctor explained, "and I'm arranging for trauma counselors to assist with their psychological recovery." As the night deepened, the police finally concluded their questioning. Officer Curtis promised to return the next day for additional details, but emphasized that the girls' health was the priority now. Left alone with their daughters, the mothers pulled chairs close to the beds, unwilling to be separated again, even by a few feet. "When I saw that red container this morning," Marion said, stroking Olivia's hair, "I felt something change inside me, like a compass needle finding north after spinning for months." "We never stopped looking," Elena assured Jasmine. "Not for a single day." "We know," Claire whispered. "Some nights in that dark container I would feel you all searching for us. It sounds strange, but it gave me hope." Outside the hospital window, the first hints of dawn appeared on the horizon, a fitting symbol for the new beginning that lay ahead. Recovery would be long and difficult, with scars both visible and invisible. But in that hospital room, surrounded by the mothers who had never given up, 4 young women began the journey back to themselves. As Danica later wrote in her journal, "Today marks both an ending and a beginning. The search is over, but the healing has just begun. What sustained us through these terrible months, love, determination, faith in each other, will sustain us still. We found our daughters in a metal box at the edge of the sea, but the truth is we never lost them. Not really, not in the ways that matter most.